Alright everybody, welcome back to the Crazyhouse World Cup. Iteration number 2. This is the second year we're doing it, and this is Crosky stepping in as your commentator for this week's match, Sexy and I Know It against xuanet. And you will have to excuse me as I've been away from the Crazyhouse scene for some time now, and I'm not terribly sure what's going on in the World Cup here, so I pulled up the cross table. And it looks, for all intents and purposes, that it's either going to be GSVC or Opera Wiesen who's going to walk away as the challenger. But that's not to say that these matches are not going to be, or not going to exhibit excellent Crazyhouse. So it's always fun to watch high-level Crazyhouse. And xuanet, I think, hasn't played. No, he has played most of his matches. And Sexy and I Know It has played a fair few as well. Where are they in the standings? Sexy is sitting at 2 points, xuanet at 1.5. Okay, so they both actually have a fair amount of matches remaining. But it looks that even if Sexy wins out, he'll only be at 7 points. Not enough to catch GSVC. Opera Wiesen, on the other hand, it looks like if he can just claim one out of his next 2 matches, he should clinch. And xuanet here, again, the maximum points he could walk away with is 5.5. But in any case, as I said, this should be a great match. And I think we're all set here. The match is supposed to start at 12:30 Eastern Time, my time. Maybe they're just waiting for more spectators to show up. It's possible. And honestly, I have no idea what to expect out of these 2 players as far as openings go. I'm not sure what they've been prepping for the candidates and what they've been playing throughout the candidates so far, as I've not watched any matches really. So whatever they play is going to be a surprise to me as well. xuanet can play anything under the sun. I think Sexy and I Know It is a fairly principled player. I think he likes E4, and here we see E4. Okay, so how is xuanet going to reply here? What's he been playing in the candidates, and is he going to play anything different? He responds with E5. Okay, so E4, E5, the theory must be holding for black. Early D6. Okay, so we have some sort of a Philidor's mix, eschewing the normal bishop C5 or bishop E7. And playing d6 first. Okay, so normal development here. Sexy and I Know It not going for an early d4 or anything. He is going for an early knight g5, taking on h7. This must be theory. This is kind of nasty. This is kind of nasty because you're weakening all these light squares. Like you play knight g5, tempting black into castling kingside, and then instead of taking on f7, which is kind of the expected path for that knight, he takes on h7, and will take on f7 only later once you get your queen into play. So g5 here is kicking away the knight from defense of its h5 square so the queen can come in, and then you can take here and just completely dominate the light squares. Black, I think, should be okay in this line if he knows very precise continuations. Namely, you have to block off this diagonal or control this square somehow. And xuanet elects to play knight g4, blocking off this diagonal. Now, you could kick this knight, and then I think kick, and if you take, then you open up the h file. So how is xuanet intending to respond to this? I looked at this once upon a time long ago, and I can't remember the theory or how exactly you're supposed to play this. This is already looking pretty tricky for xuanet. Sexy and I Know It has only given up a piece for a pawn, and it looks like he has a pretty overwhelming attack. He has a lot of ideas. It's easy for white to play this, whereas it's very difficult for black to navigate all the complications and all of white's threats. Like, it may be possible with precise, but okay, he takes. Now he's going to take on g4 with check, opening up that rook. Takes with check, maybe you play at h6, or what is Sexy thinking? Maybe he's going to take first, but then you develop black's queen for him. So what's the hang up here? What's he thinking about? Maybe this pawn on g4 will cause white a little bit of consternation getting his queen into the game, but in any case, I think you had to take. So takes, pawn h6, blocking that off, and now it's a game. Now it's a game. So white's considering taking here, although that might be premature, because I don't see how he exploits those light squares immediately. Just develop your knight. If he takes, you develop the queen, but maybe then you can put a knight on and hit that queen, or something to that effect. Queen f3. Okay, he just, yeah, if queen f3, you're just going to get hit. So takes, takes. And now you can place a piece with tempo. So do you want to play bishop h4, establishing some dark square presence, or just a knight on, but then this pawn falls? Or takes, still seems premature to me. But maybe takes and pawn here, blocking this off, and creating some threats there. But in the case they go a different route here. Bishop does appear on f5. So takes, takes, and now you have pressure on these light squares. That's always going to be the problem in this line when you have an early knight takes h7, the bishop appearing at the f7 square interminably, throughout the entire game. Okay, so now black is getting his own counterplay, which I think is crucial. He has an open e-file to work with. Bishop pressuring f2. You don't particularly want to take this and further weaken the g3 square for this bishop to drop on or something. Bishop here doesn't seem like much. What about takes, takes, takes? Can you survive that? Bishop here back, knight on. Bishop here back. I don't think that works. Interesting. Okay, knight e4 hits the queen and defends f2. What I'm intrigued by is why he didn't use this knight. But maybe it's more solid just to place his knight in hand and make sure he gets it on the board. Okay, so it looks like he's escaping. Pawn on, king just steps back and is nicely secure on the queen side. What about f3, opening up the queen, but then he has bishop on, bishop back, takes, takes. Xuanet decides just to play practically, plays his queen back to e7, and now the king is safely ensconced on the queen side. Okay. So now both have a fairly clear plan of attack. Sexy is going to look again to exploit these light squares, maybe use this, bring this rook to bear by exploding the h-file somehow, maybe bishop here, pawn here, and black on the other hand is going to try to pry open the queen side. 93, I like that move. Getting two attackers on c2 and attacking the queen. Okay. I would guess that, yeah, Sexy's under extreme time pressure. Maybe he just sacks the queen and plays for some all-in counterplay. But no, he does move the queen. I think Xuanet is going to take this. He's just scooping up the queen, and white really has nothing. Bishop here, he can even just step back. Or takes, takes, and step back. Takes. He doesn't want to deal with any sort of knight g6 business. I think you can just take that queen. Takes, takes, takes. Or even bishop here. It's fine. But like takes, pawn here, bishop here, takes. Takes must be leading to mate. Or even just bishop here directly, even queen here. I think is okay. Although knight here, takes, rook here, takes, takes. I don't think it's enough, but always a little threats like that you need to be wary of. And I'll just take here, should do it. Actually, takes king b1. Where's the mate there? Ah, this is nice. If takes queen on mate, and if king sidesteps, in any case, Xuanet takes the first game here, so that's 1-0 to Xuanet. The lifetime score is 177 Xuanet, 83 Sexy, and I know so Xuanet is the favorite going into this match, and does take the first game as black. So nicely played from Xuanet, navigating that very tricky knight takes h7 line. what do we have here? Some sort of a Scotch game with an early d5 pawn sack. Okay, I think this is the indicated way to play this. Play d5, give away that pawn, and just liberate your pieces. Otherwise, it's very possible to get steamrolled in the center. Alright, so this must all be theory, playing very quickly. At g3 is interesting, so I guess the idea is if takes here, then some sort of a capture on d5 and you get 2 pawns on the first rank, and if on the second rank, and if f takes, just knight here, rook takes, I'm not sure, so is he going to take here? Maybe allow this, bishop here, so this is the idea. Okay, so you're threatening this and perhaps going to take on d5 next with this knight that you've placed from your pocket. Keep this knight defending the king side. In any case, how do you defend this? King steps over to the d1. Okay, so takes, or pawn on, I mean. Or do you take on d5? Or is there some other completely different approach that I'm not considering? Maybe this? Nah. I prefer getting a pawn in hand and immediately capitalizing on this open h2 square. So this is a critical moment. Is he going to play bishop f5, hitting c2 a few times? I guess the response to bishop f5 would be to c4. Seems simple enough. But then, yeah, you weaken this a little bit, so something like this, pawn on, or just this, pawn on directly. You have a few pawns in hand. Sexy, and I know we're going into a tank here. Maybe he was trying to remember his theory, maybe he was just calculating some lines. Okay, so he does take on c2 and place his pawn on h2. I wonder whether that was stronger than taking on d5. Probably, because right now this d5 pawn is actually blocking some of white's pieces. Okay, bishop f4, developing his piece, getting some room for his king, and connecting his rooks. Okay. So takes. Now black would love to have another pawn in hand. He doesn't really want to play any slow moves here and give white the chance to use his pocket pieces and use his kind of central mass of pieces. I was going to say central majority, but then normally refers to pawn structure. So just central control with all these pieces in the center here, and start attacking. Black's king is still in the center. You always have pawn sacks like d6, opening up sacks on f2, and this knight coming into the game. You have pawn e6 ideas. You want to drop these knights on the board, maybe knight e5. In any case, Sexy does play bishop f5 with tempo, developing this piece. He probably will get hit by pawn e4. So how is he going to respond to that? Is he just going to take it and play h2 at h2? So pawn e3, is he going to take that and play at h2? Or just play rook f1? I mean, that can be taken, and there aren't any immediate threats on the first rank. My Crazyhouse is terribly rusty. I haven't played in a long time, so it's very possible I'm missing a ton of stuff. What I'm thinking is just take, and pawn here. Sexy decides against that and just gets castled, but that does allow his g2 pawn to drop, and along with it, any threats on the first rank. But black does manage to get his king out of the center. Okay, bishop b4. I guess he wants a knight in hand. So like takes, and knight a3, or knight e1 is probably his idea. Takes, knight e1. So takes you can always take with the queen though. And in any case, you don't have time to do this because of the threats on the king side. So black just takes on h6, weakens this diagonal. So are you just taking back, or are you playing at e5? Xuanet goes at e5. Can you hit the queen somehow with at c5, or no, you just take? That's taken. The bishop was on that, so it takes with the queen. Knight a1 was his idea. Very interesting. If king b1, pawn c2. And of course you can't take the knight because rook at b1 would be mate. So the king sidesteps to d2. He doesn't want to give up that queen for any pawn appearing on c2. Black would love another knight right now. So his motif with king and queen placed thusly. Okay, knight comes in g4 and a bishop appears on d1. Defending it perhaps against pawn c2. And again, Sexy and I know is well down on time. Xuanet has been playing odd tempo and Sexy has been going into a tank on a few crucial, critical moments, and that's costing him. Rook h1. Okay, so now he finally puts that rook on the first rank, but I don't really see what it's accomplishing. I think that can just be taken. Queen takes, or king takes. Because if you take the bishop, you don't want to deal with knight f1, cutting off the king and opening up discoveries. So it takes with the queen. We have another trade on e2. Knight d4. Sexy's kind of throwing the kitchen sink at him, but Xuanet should again walk away with this one. I don't see him losing this one. He just has too many pieces around his king. Interesting. Let's his queen drop. I wonder why. What was I missing there? What was the threat? Something along the first rank that Xuanet appreciates, and I don't quite, because he played bishop f1 just to block that rook off. Okay. Now Sexy has some ideas that can just be taken. That's interesting, but I guess Xuanet wanted to get this piece on with tempo. But the queen, if the queen comes into action, can you sack or play knight here? And must be some kind of a ridiculous smother mate in there somewhere. Okay, but you can just take here, right? King, you can't take because you get a fork in, so the king sidesteps, and now you can pressure g7. Yeah, this should be nasty. Takes, pawn back on, or is there some kind of a, again, weird smother with like knight here, takes, knight here, but knight here, this pawn can take. Takes, and I'll see how you capitalize on that. Sexy, I know, is doing a good job of staying in the game here, actually. And Xuanet is now down to under 30 seconds. Okay. Ooh, takes, king takes, knight here. That must be enough. King up, rook here. Oh, now you can just take the queen with check. I don't think you should have stepped there, but gets that queen with check. That's important. Okay. So Xuanet goes up in the match 2-0. e4 from Sexy again, and Xuanet is changing things up with knight f6. Is he going to go into the Crosky gambit? Takes. He allows it, and Sexy declines. Okay, so d5. He goes d6 just to pressure this center. And now, which way is he going to take? Is he going to take with the e pawn and play d5, or take with the g pawn and gives the rook to the g file? He elects to play e takes. He's going to play d5. He does. Liberate this bishop. And now he has given up a piece for a pawn. But he's solid here with this pawn securing some important 5th rank squares. And his bishop's nicely coordinated. Okay, pawn e4 looks natural to me. Blocking off this check and establishing some presence in White's camp. At g5 castles, he doesn't mind a sack on g7, it seems. Sexy trades first on c6, then does sack on g7. Is he going to take this, or is he going to leave it there and play for his own counterplay? He takes it. Okay. At e5, pressuring the dark squares, coming in on f6. Can you play this bishop back? Can you play another bishop on? Can you just step the king back? Steps the king to h7. Curious. Okay, so takes. Pawn on, queen moves, and you don't have immediate follow-up there. that I see. Okay. What about knight h5? Looking at both these squares, he does play knight h5. Okay, so idea is rook g1, that's going to be too slow, takes, pawn on, knight takes, then do something else. He plays bishop g4, threatening this knight, so if it takes the queen, interesting, so pawn here, king steps here, if you take the bishop, covers some important squares over here, so I'm expecting bishop takes, or is he going to take with the queen? No, I expect bishop takes. Just getting as many pieces on these dark squares as possible. He takes with the queen, though. Interesting. Okay. So yeah, the thing is, I'm not sure what this bishop is doing out here, and personally, I would have brought this bishop back in to guard the king side. Xuanet, though, is a stronger player than I. Feels more comfortable with his queen guarding his king side. Okay, so interesting. Instead of defending these dark squares, which I think was probably impossible, and I think he correctly assessed that it was impossible to guard these dark squares, he goes for his counterplay. Knight h4 allows his bishop to appear on g2 or g7, threatening mate, and then he takes, knight takes, king steps. But what's your follow-up here? I think the king is safe here, and you don't have time to play like at f3 because you're just going to be mated in one with rook h1, and I'm not sure how he's going to wriggle out of this one. It looks pretty nasty. I think Sexy is going to walk away with this win here. And again, he's up on time. The clock really tells a story. Who is putting more pressure on the clock normally corresponds to who is winning on the board. So it looks like Sexy, and I know, is going to get on the board here. Yeah, I'm sorry to Opera Weason if you're watching this after the fact that I've never actually tried live stream. Guess it's just easier on me just to record locally and then upload later, so I'm not even sure how I would live stream. I haven't looked into how to set up OBS for that. Maybe sometime in the future, but for now, just recording locally. I guess it would be nice if I live streamed to get on the side of Lee Chess here so people could come watch the match, be notified of it, and I could interact with the chat and see what sort of suggestions they're making and such, but again, I'll have to figure that out in the future. Also, what's happened here? How did he get his counterplay? But you can just take this, right? Takes, pawn on, king steps back, pawn on, king steps back, and he can't even give a check or anything because his pawn defends. Okay. Wait, what? Here, up, pawn on, up, rook here, pawn blocks, takes, pawn here, king. Why are you giving him this sort of counterplay, though? What I miss here, I hope you don't mind if I scroll back just a few moves just to see what happened. Try g7. Queen on. Oh, what I miss here? Black has a... Oh, interesting find from xuanet, sacking that queen. Okay, so things have gone as predicted. Rook comes to the e-file. Block with a pawn. Probably take that, right? Takes. Pawn here. King steps here. This pawn will fall. But it shouldn't be enough. I don't think it should be enough. And anyway, you're blocking off this, so you can just take here and be okay. Yeah, it's not enough. Not quite enough. Queen takes is nothing, and the king is always escaping. Okay, so Sexy does walk away with his first game victory in this match, and now he's turning the tables. He's himself playing an early knight f6, offering that gambit on f6, likely. So xuanet, throwing a bit of a curveball, does not go for the center expansion and instead playing knight c3, just securing his e4 pawn. And okay, we're back into e4, e5 stuff. xuanet is thinking here on move 3 about how to play this position, probably trying to throw a bit of a curveball, but he decides just to play into a very similar line as we recently saw. Okay, so takes, rook g1, and again this g3 move. So is there going to be some improvement on this line? Last time you played this knight b4 idea, yeah, this must be what he must have looked at this in the past. So what about something like this and this? This, I guess you just block the bishop. Okay, king d1 must be fine. So bishop here directly. Last time he took on c2 first. Is he going to play this first? This time. He is taking a second to think here, whether he wants to go back into that same line or choose something different. Okay, he goes back into it, so king takes at h2, and again, bishop f4 was played last game. And white won that game, so Sexy is going to have to find an improvement. Bishop f5 was played, the previous encounter, and that was responded to with at e3, if I'm remembering correctly. Alright, I think castles was the move there. Now knight at e3. Okay, this is a little bit different, isn't it? Hitting this. I like this move. I think black had to do something a little bit more incisive there than castling. I think you have to continue your initiative, or else it's just going to peter out. You've given some material, and white can kind of consolidate and pick off this pawn. What about takes now? Takes here. I think this is your last chance to do something to that effect. Oops, c5. That's an interesting move. Possible because en passant fails to queen takes d4. Okay, so he just wanted to insert the c5 move and displace this queen maybe before taking on d3, but he plays at d4 instead of coming out on the second rank. Interesting. Picking off a knight, he must have evaluated that was more important than crushing through on the first rank here. Okay, so now you are creating some weaknesses on white's queen side here around his king. No dark squares. Maybe you get a knight at b4 or knight at a3 perhaps if you take the pawn. If he takes with the queen, knight b4 I suppose, or rook f1 seems nice. You can take this pawn, but then you have knight checks. So how is xuanet going to respond to that? Does he have any threats on the king side? Knight at h6 be sidestepped. Okay, so it takes the pawn, allowing the knight to appear, but I think rook f1 must be correct here. Rook f1 takes, knight here, king sidesteps, queen b6. So maybe knight here, king comes this way. I'm not sure. Maybe you get a knight in on one of these squares, like I can't do. Can of course move this knight. That is a pin. And white must be threatening some attack of his own. He's threatening this bishop, first of all. Although maybe you can just let that drop. Maybe queen here directly, saying you don't have anything immediately on the king side, and in the meantime I'm trying to get my counterplay going. But no, Sexy decides to place this knight on the king side and kind of curl up here and hope he can survive this attack. Hitting the queen, reinforcing e7, so if knight takes, what about takes, right here. Okay, he decides he doesn't need to do any crazy sacks, but he does allow this d5 pawn to fall, again with tempo, so I think he did not see that. I think he didn't see that. So what about takes, trying to opening up this bishop? Nope, he goes for knight a6, but no, just sidestep that, right? Sidestep, and you don't have a heavy piece to threaten the smother mate. Interesting how long this g2 pawn has survived. That was attacked way back in the opening. Okay, so activating this bishop, getting it out of range of this knight, and reinforcing g7. Black is somehow outplayed xuanet here in this middle game, I feel. I think black is okay in this position. Can that not be taken? What am I missing? Oh. He says, I like my knight on d5, where it's threatening some stuff on c3 and hitting a lot of your central squares. So he just moves the queen up, simultaneously threatening moves like this, coming into a4, trying to finally activate this queen and get some threats on the king side. So here will be responded by bishop b3, and now you finally get this rook on the first rank. But queen takes g2. Nice. That's very important. We are in a time scramble now, and thankfully we have increment. Alright, at a3 takes, what's his idea? Just taking on c3? That's nice. Okay, so undermining defense of the c3 square. We have two pieces aimed at. At g5, I would rather play white here, but in a time scramble anything can happen. Okay, this is defended by this bishop, so he takes, opening up the queen. Can you take here? Can you play this? Ooh, what about this? You can't take because the queen comes in. He decides to take on e2. I think the check here is possible. The queen does, I guess, need to defend f7 if you give white any tempo with his rook in hand to threaten this smother mate. Rook g7, okay, pawn coming on. Yeah, black's threats are evaporating quickly, and now white is going to crash through. Okay, so crazy time scramble there. xuanet does walk away the victor. e4, d5, mixing it up again. Playing the center counter. I wonder whether xuanet is a member of Team Scandi. Alright, we have an early e5. Kicking this knight. Responded in kind at e4. So takes. Should be fine. b4. Wow. What's his idea here? Just activating his pieces or what? Can you not just take back on f3? Okay, he does. Now, you don't particularly want to develop black's pieces for him, or he's going to have a nice pin. Be an excellent bishop. So are you just going to take back? Take the queen. Knight d5. I like this move. Hitting c7. So the queen, drops back to a5? Or maybe d6. Maybe d6 is a little bit more solid. Or c5 even. Yeah, I like d6. Nicely centralized. Or is he going to play something completely unexpected like at e2? Give his own intermezzo in there. Nope, just drops back to d6. I think that's probably the best move. Queen takes f3. And I'll just take back on f6 or develop. Or at c6, hitting this knight. Okay. Now what about... Oh, no, I don't think that works. I was going to say takes and pawn at f6, but I think black has enough defenders on the square. He takes on e7 first. Okay, yeah, you're giving him this chance to exchange this knight for this bishop. See whether or not Sexy wants to do that. I probably would. This knight is hit. Just take. What's he thinking about here? No, he just takes. Queen takes with check, so at e3, at e4, bishop e2, maybe even queen e4, but queen e2. Okay. A little bit conservative, but it seems like a fine move. You can't play a move like knight d4 here, hitting the queen and hitting c2, because you just exchanged on e7 and your king's the only piece defending that queen, so c takes d3. Oh, knight at d3. Interesting. Interesting. So he gets this knight on c2. Takes is his idea. So he sacked a knight for a rook, and the ability just to displace white's king a little bit. And now pawn at c2 is not really a threat, because you have no threats on the back rank to follow up with that. That's well defended. So white can do something here. He decides not to even worry about it. He just plays very solid at c2. Will that be taken? I think that's safe for white if that's taken. I think black needs to develop here. Either develop or get some of his pieces on the board. Yeah. Knight a6. Okay. Now you are threatening to take on c2 because takes the knight can come in b4. So white gets his queen on the board in a nicely central location with check. Alright, bishop blocks, developing. So if you take, I guess you're just castling queenside. Yeah, I like that. Takes you castle queenside, connecting your rooks and saying my king is safer than yours with my threats on c2, my knight coming in. Maybe. Okay, I like this d7 move as well. Sacking this pawn, exploiting this pen, but making sure black's king does stay in the center where it can be attacked, and only then cashing in on g7. You can play a move like rook d8 and escape to the queen side if you so desire. Like rook here, knight on, just move your king back. That's possible. Do you have something better, like taking here? But then you always have to worry about checks, and your king cannot step to the first, or the 8th rank rather, because the queen will take this rook with check. So rook d8 seems fine, or rook g7 with tempo on the queen so you can escape your king. Over here to c8 and b8. I don't really see anything better than that. Unless he's trying to play like rook g6. Rook d6 can be responded to with a knight appearing, forking those pieces, so that's no good. What are white's threats if you just play a move like rook g8, d8? Okay, so after a significantly long thing, xuanet does play that. Wonder what he was thinking about there, because that was a long think, and it cost him some very valuable time there. And now Sexy and I know it has over a minute. xuanet has less than 30 seconds. Let's see if Sexy can keep this pressure on the clock going. Plays at d7. Drawing the king over. Drawing the king away from the queen side. That's clever. That's creative. So king takes, and now you get this bishop on. You can take this, or you can even take, you can even take here if you want. That's interesting. Taking here twice and getting rid of black's defenders on the first rank, but now probably just taking here is fine, or knight here first. Okay, he just decided to take twice on h8, just getting rid of black's 2 rooks defending his king. Rook appears again on the 8th rank. Bishop back, threatening here will be responded to with king c8, I imagine, but then this piece drops, so about this, maybe queen appears on e8 using one of his 2 queens to secure his king side, or his king's safety. Does white have any other threats? Knight here, again you step back. Rook here, that's interesting. Takes, you have a knight check, but then your knight's just going to end up, well, interesting. He doesn't even want to take that. Huh, okay. So just making sure he can make use of his pocket queens, getting a queen on, and yeah, but then this rook appears again, and now you have a rook, or rather a queen staring at this rook than a rook. So if you take that, you're losing a queen to a rook instead of if you had taken the first time and just trading pieces. He decides to go for it now, but I think it would have been better if he had just taken there directly. Okay, defending against knight e7. But this square is defended by the bishop as well. But I think black should be safe here. White's safe as well, though, too, I guess. So this will be interesting. This will be a complex game to play, even with a bunch of time on the clock. But they both have 10 seconds, so you've got to take on c2. This rook defends this knight from jumping into c4. Ah, this is a nice, very nice deflection move or diversion move or whatever that's called, blocking off the b file. So you can jump this knight in. But you can also step back here with this. Okay, interesting. So you allow that c-pawn to promote. Now rook here is nothing. You can just take that. Takes. Knight here is the threat. Knight here. Yeah. Ah, but this you can step this way. This rook defends the square. Is there some nasty smother? Ah, very nice, very nice. Make sure this rook is getting off that king's escape. Then you just administer a check with that knight, vacating the c2 square and place that queen on c2. Very nice find. And xuanet goes up 4-1. 4-1. He will secure the match with 2 more wins. Playing some sort of weird Spanish here with the bishop appearing on b5 with the knight already on c3. Interesting. Okay. Oftentimes that knight will be taken on c6 once white has created some threats over here, but I don't think I've ever seen it quite played like this. The pawn getting all the way to e5, threatening that knight, pawn on h6. This looks dangerous. I think Sexy may have played this ever so slightly too cavalierly, too quickly, not appreciating that xuanet has a lot of threats here, a lot of control over these dark squares with this pawn on e5 and early appearance of a pawn on h6. Is he just going to play rook e8, but then that can just be taken? His plan was probably to play this with the plan of takes, and that's a check, and then you can take back on g7 with the bishop. But maybe he didn't consider the fact that this is on b5 controlling that square. He takes on e5 first. Okay. White's probably fine with the queen trade here, though, because his king is far safer. And now you've got to like block off this e-file. No, he just goes for the queen trade. Wow. So takes queen here, maybe. No, I don't like it. I like white here. I suspect that the engine evaluation gives a win for white here already. Because you can't take this. That's just immediate mate. And in the meantime, you're threatening to take this knight and... What? Can you not takes, and... Oops, takes, win this? Or... is he going to play... No, because now you have this knight. I mean, you have to do something about knight h6, right? That's just mate if you don't take here directly. So here, and here's picking off this piece. Yeah, I think Sexy has misplayed this game. Because your bishops defend your king side. So there aren't any like pawn drops or anything that can draw the king out. That's just not going to be enough. You can even play something as simple as add e5 here. Add e2 is fine. Bishop here. You can play just bishop at c3, I think. It's fine. Bishop at c3. And if takes, you win. And if takes... you can even take with the knight there, or even with the pawn. Let this drop. That's just going to be mate. If you move the queen, that's just going to be mate. Yeah, I don't see any counterplay from black here. So takes. I don't think it really matters how white decides to take this. Could hit the queen, and then just play for mate on the dark squares here. He does decide to defend that bishop. Interesting. But what dropped over here? The knight dropped over here on g4. I wasn't even looking at that, but the king steps up. Getting the queens off, that's nice. I was going to say knight d5, but getting the queens off is very nice. And that's going to do it. Alright, so far an excellent performance from xuanet. 5-1. 5-1. Exceeding his rating expectation, I think. Expected performance rating. Alright, going for center counter again. He must indeed be a Team Scandi member. Alright, going for this line. This must be some sort of theory that I'm not just not abreast of, since I haven't played for some time and haven't watched high-level Crazyhouse for some time. This must be some line I'm not aware of. Or it could be the case that it's a novelty from xuanet that he's looked at on his own. b4. Yeah, he goes for this again. This is interesting. I'm still not convinced, but what do I know? He must be just trying to deflect the queen away from c7 and the fifth rank. So you're trying to get this move in with tempo, I guess, is the whole point of this move. So you can get the knight in with tempo, maybe develop your bishop at a later stage. But it is a pawn, you know, a pawn's a pawn. Queen takes. Okay. Now, can you play your own knight drop, knight d4? It's probably possible here. Plays at b2, also possible. So takes, rook here, takes. I like this for black. I like this. Yeah, in fact, unless white has some immediate counterpunch here, black is just going to be better. So the only immediate counterpunch I see here is a knight at d5, hitting again these two squares. But I mean, you could even, well, in any case, you're scooping up this bishop with check at the very least. I think he's got to go for this though. Just get his piece on. Just get your piece on the board. Create some threats. What about knight here takes? That's probably possible as well. In fact, that's probably even better than the line I was looking at. What about knight here takes? You take on c7, king just steps up, I suppose. Or even steps here, takes, you just take that back. You have no real threats. Check, you can just take. No. Yeah, he's worried about, I guess, is just black just completely disregarding this knight appearing on that square and taking the rook, promoting. Okay, so Sexy calculated all that out and decides he has to take that pawn on b2 with his bishop. So he gives up that piece and just castles, gets his king to safety. And meanwhile, black is going to have to figure out how to play this position. Is he going to take this pawn, or is he just going to place a knight on, hitting the queen, and getting some of his pieces on the board? Maybe bishop g4. No, I like a knight on. Then this is always going to be a weakness, but the queen can always step back to defend this if necessary, or bishop can appear on one of these squares to defend. He decides to play very simply, taking the f-pawn, opening up this bishop. Okay. White's probably just going to centralize his rook. Nope, he does not. He decides to activate his knight first. Hitting c7 and also defending the square, so the queen cannot drop back and defend this. And now if you play queen e5 to defend that square, you're going to be hit by a pin. So just bishop at d6 is probably okay. Bishop at d6, defending this. You don't really want to use this bishop because it weakens your king side a little bit too much. It's important to stay strong on these dark squares, because those are the squares that white's hitting right now. If this queen appearing on f6 and this knight on a light square hitting the dark squares, it's important to stay strong on the dark squares around your king. So at c5, trying to deflect this bishop from defensive c7. But now I feel you need to create some counter threats. Knight here. Interesting. Takes, just king takes, queen comes back into play. Wow, interesting. I'm not totally sure about this. What the heck's going on here? What the heck is going on here? If takes, take with check. Take, queen on. Ah, you can't block because the bishop is on that square. So the queen does sidestep. Now you have your threats on c7 though. So how's black going to defend this one? Ah, it takes the knight. The knight cut queen off. He doesn't take that. He just decides to put a piece on. But now black is kind of coalescing all his forces here in the center, getting safe, and pressuring Sexy on the clock. He has 3 seconds. Yeah, I think this has been misplayed. Black is going to win this. Black is definitely going to win this. He's just too safe. Far too safe. Can just be taken. Making sure he doesn't promote. Rook here. You can even play queen d8. That should be fine. If queen appears again here, you can just defend this with a rook. Or the bishop. That's nice, so you can finally get castled if you want. You can also play h4, h5 at any point. You can play at f4. You can put a rook on the h file. You can just castle. You can play bishop here. The knight is hanging, but he lets that knight hang. That's fine. Knight here. Rook here is nice. If that's taken, then you get a knight in here. That's very nice. Pawn here takes. Knight here. Takes, takes. King steps up. Queen on, takes. Pawn on, up. Pawn there, mate. There's knight here, right? Okay, or just takes, and now you can take here if you want. About a blue billion different mates here you could play. Just depends which suits your artistic fancy, I guess. That should clinch the match. Yes, it does, 6-1, but they're going to play out the full 10 games for the fans, I guess. Or probably for tiebreak purposes. Okay, we're going back into this bishop b5 line. Probably just avoiding the bulk of mainline Italian theory. Playing something ever so slightly different. So that's what he did last game. He captured on e5. Very interesting. Wow. So that's an interesting gambit. Establishing his pawn on e5 and Sexy contending that, okay, you've sacrificed that piece for that nice pawn on e5 and the presence on the dark squares, but I'm willing to give that piece back to give rid of that pawn on e5 and develop my own pieces in a coherent and fluent manner. It's kind of funny that this actually resembles, in some respects, a proper Ruy Lopez or Spanish, where you have this structure on the queen side, a6 and b5, and this bishop hops back to b3. An open, we'll call it an open Spanish, right? With that, with that sack on e5, an open Spanish. Okay, pawn at f5. So if not h4, not h4. Is he just going to ignore that? And he decides to take here with the bishop, but know, I kind of like knight h4, taking there with the knight. Maybe, okay, so maybe bishop takes directly is a little bit smarter because you have threats here, but more importantly, you're getting rid of the g2's defense of the f3 square. So now you're threatening piece and pawn drops on f3. Although I'm not really sure how dangerous that is. But how do you say this knight, or this rook rather, is the thing? Because if rook g1, then a knight, rook g1, knight here, king steps, takes, and you're on the queen too. So xuanet, instead of going for that, he just allows that to drop and takes on e6 first, but you cannot take this. That must be some kind of mate. That must be some kind of mate. So I think you have to take back here, or maybe even castle, and just take and step your king to h8. But taking here should, what about takes, 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 block, pawn on here, knight here, queen takes, takes, takes. Maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Probably missed something. Just trying to evaluate that position. So knight f3, but what about takes? Takes, takes, king just steps there and is safe, I guess. So just king steps here, should be okay. And you maintain your threats. So xuanet here, of course, must be considering the sack on e6, figuring out whether or not it's worth anything. Decides it's not. I can understand that. He decides just to hit the queen. And the idea here too is if the queen goes away from the first rank, you have pawn at b7 hitting the rook, and your knight is defending the natural square for that rook to go to. Okay. So in any case, we're appearing on g1, defended by the queen. Okay. Well, black does have a queen in hand, but how do you use that? I think the king is nicely defended on d1, but okay, so just taking here is very natural. Getting this rook into play, defending the d7 square from any pawn drops. Okay, I kind of like this for black. Cat Poacher saying pawn at g2 looked crushing just now. So instead of taking that knight, pawn at g2, that does look good. It does look good, because white doesn't really have any threat. Like if you play a pawn here, I think that can just be taken, and then you can step back and take that knight. So pawn at g2 did look nice. Okay, so Fumatox is going to tell us why that was not a good idea, because I can't quite see it yet. Oh, Fumatox says it's because it was. Okay. Anyway, that's not how the game went. But a pawn did appear on g2. Let's scoot back just a few moves, see what happened there. He took on h1, pawn pairing on g2. Anyway, because if takes, then queen here is mate. The queen is defending that square for the moment. Takes, takes. That's okay. That's an important move. Getting a bishop on with check and defending some of the light squares here. But you're giving up another queen. I think black is going to win this. Well, in any case, I shouldn't call it so early, but black is much better here. You have no pawn drops, the knight defends that. You really have no checks. You have no queen of your own. Black has two queens and then is meanwhile threatening some really nasty discoveries. And even if it's not a discovery, if you get rid of this knight, then you have pawn drops here, knight placed here, and you have two queens in hand. So, okay, pawn. What does this accomplish? If you just take this with a rook, he's trying to get some play on the first rank, I guess, or the back rank. Just pawn here. He's just going to say takes, 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 and then what? So pawn here, takes, takes, king takes, knight here, and king steps up. Bishop out, e5. I guess this works for black. He's saying white just doesn't have enough to mate me. Yeah, Sexy is going to walk away with a moral victory, if not a victory that matters, especially for the match count. rating points for ego. That's always important, right? Okay, 6-2. See what he can do with these last two games. Alright, he again allows xuanet to kind of choose the pace here. With this d5 line. Is he going to play b4 again? He goes. He must have faith in this line. Okay, he goes back to the first way he played this with an early knight at d5. I like that. I like that move. I think that's the whole point of playing b4. Putting the queen on the square so you can play this with tempo and develop your pieces. So at c6. And now here's where he played something like takes e7 if I'm not mistaken. Is there an improvement there? Can you play... Well, I was looking at tricky stuff like this queen takes, but there's no... The queen, that's defended anyway, so that's... disregard anything I say, that's nothing. What about right here? That's probably, again, nothing. Queen defends a square. What about just giving that up? He's probably looking at like some crazy sack lines, just fluidly developing his... with bishop a3, I just saw that. This is the whole point of his b4 line. You know what? I suspect that he looked at this on the computer before the match, this b4 line, saw this, and did not see c6 in the computer lines when he was analyzing it, and perhaps didn't see or forgot about this bishop a3 move, because this seems correct to me. This seems the correct way to play. We just didn't quite find it the first few times they played into this line. At least I could be completely mistaken about that, not giving Sexy enough credit or xuanet enough credit. I don't know. I'm curious to look at the evaluation after the game, see what the engine has to say about that, but that's my human impression. Okay, he doesn't even want to take that bishop and allow the knight coming in with check. There's a queen in hand, so yeah, the bishop is probably immune to capture that is poisonous. So knight c6, he's threatening that, so the bishop appears on b5, pinning the knight. I like white here. I like white here. This is probably the correct way to play this b4 line. Wow. Wow, he allows that. I don't like that because that knight's just going to be taken. Oh, this is a win for white. Well played from Sexy. Very well played. This enterprising b4 line really paid off. I think he figured it out. That's the panacea there. That's the magic solution. As you place the knight on d5 and in response to the c6 line, you just get your bishop out. This is crushing for white. I don't see any defense. So, like if this... I would love for this match just to keep on going and play 20 games or something like this. So xuanet then has time to rebut Sexy's novelty or new way of playing this line, and they can kind of feel each other out over an extended course of time and see who's on top in that line after a number of games. But you know, the match is not structured that way, just a 10-game match, and so novelties really do count. And who can figure things out over the board the best and the quickest. Okay, anyway, let's take a look at this game. What's going on here? I kind of wrote it out, but that comes on to f5, defending immediate mate. Queen d6. Queen d6. H-bar says that would have been cute. And indeed, it is cute, so takes, or pawn here is just mate, isn't it? That is cute. That's very cute. If knight takes, then pawn here is mate. If this pawn takes, pawn here is mate. So that's a beautiful, beautiful kind of deflection move. That's a nice find. Appreciating this kind of pattern here where the king is cut off by the knight and by the bishop, controlling all these squares. So that's the kind of cue that clues you in that there's some sort of a tactic here. Takes a queen, and if knight takes, queen here is mate. Again, if pawn takes, queen here is mate. So it doesn't really change anything. xuanet can resign here with a clear conscience. go into the final game of the match. Just queenette. I don't know, because then you can run, but queen takes here. Finding the most efficient mate here, I guess, is sexy. You can even just take this bishop if you want. Pawn here will work, of course. King here. Queen at f8 is mate, so that's taken. Takes, queen takes, king here. Xuanet does throw on the tower. And move into the final game of the match. The 10th and final game of the match. Again, Xuanet has secured the match victory. But again, into the bishop e5 line. Is he going to play this open Spanish, I called it, this knight takes e5. He plays d4 this time. d4, I guess the idea is takes, push. Takes, takes, takes. That must be okay. So is there anything better than takes, push? Maybe just take that back. Or take here first. All right, just takes that back. Okay. That makes a little bit more sense to me. So b5 just kind of puts this bishop on an even better diagonal, so I don't think that's quite what you want to play. He does take. Pawn here, looking for takes and knight f3. There's a standard pattern here, standard theme in these types of positions. I mean, this position is completely new to me, but when the queen is on d5, king on e1, and you don't have very many defenders here, the bishop has vacated and the knight has vacated defense of the king's side, so it's a common theme. So how do you respond to this? Rook g1 takes, and then you have to defend f3 somehow, like e5. You probably play knight g5 or knight e5 next, or e2. Add e2 is also very comfortable defense. All right, knight appears on e6, where it cannot be summarily captured by that bishop, hitting the queen, defending some of the king side squares, notably. I cannot draw arrows for the life of me. Notably g7. Also looking at some central squares. There's a nicely placed knight, although it does somewhat retard the development of this bishop in the future. Even if you could play this pawn out, which you cannot at first. So you would like to get castled, but then you just run into an open g file and threats on h6 once you gather this pawn. So it's tricky to figure out how to develop here. Maybe you do want to play b5, just so you can play maybe d6 and get the bishop out. One of these two avenues. But anyway, is there anything better than that? Knight e5, hitting these two pieces. That seems like a nice square for that knight. I would play either b5 or knight c5. I don't see anything better than that. Maybe at b4 is... I don't really know what you're accomplishing by that. So if he plays knight c5, is white just going to play something calm like queen g3 and try to gather this pawn and hit the king side and say my knight's already defending that, so it's not a big deal? Maybe. Okay, he does play knight c5. So let's see if that's Xuanet's plan or if he has anything better in mind. And he plays queen g3, hitting g7, hitting g2, and getting the queen out of harm's way. Sexy immediately takes that bishop. Can you insert this? No, because you have this intermezzo, rook g8, hitting the queen with, or not intermezzo, but you're moving rook g8, hitting the queen with tempo, and then you can take, or move the knight back. So, and I don't see anything like queen taking on f7 working out with only one knight in hand. Anyway, so just take this back, I think, is probably best. Just takes back, and then what's black's idea there? Taking on e4, because his knight is inverted, I guess, is the idea. And if takes, then this bishop can come here, defending the rook that way. Xuanet, always the aggressive player, always the very incisive player, decides just to say, okay, you've taken that piece, but I want to get my play on the king side. Let me play knight f5 first, before bothering with this knight. And if takes, then you can take here with check. Bishop comes to h6. I like this knight f5 move. I like it. So now you can take here, though, right? Takes, and now you're hitting the hitting the rook. It has no defense on the g file, but you do have bishop f6. Okay, so that's okay for black. If takes, so maybe you're forced just to take g2, or maybe what about takes, and then takes here? Or is he just going to give that up entirely and take here immediately and take back? I'm not sure. I don't think that's best. I think one of those earlier lines I mentioned was probably just taking here is okay. Or taking here first and then taking here. Queen takes g7, a move I did not foresee at all. Didn't even look at that. Okay, so I guess that must be taken. Takes, king steps here, bishop h6, king g8, and then what? Knight back, takes, pawn on. What the heck? What is going on here? I'm clearly missing something. I do apologize. Not really. I'll get another knight in hand after the capture. Wow. Fumatalk's chiming in saying xuanet is the Michael Tall of Crazyhouse. That's high praise from Fumatalk's. A very strong player in his own right. I think he's part of this championship, isn't he? Let's take a very quick look. Well, maybe not. Maybe he just missed out on that spot. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's focus in on the final seconds of this final game here. There's a queen on g8, capture on c3. Do you have time to take that back? Takes. You have rook on the first rank threats. Bishop comes out, connecting these rooks indirectly. A rook here, or the queen defends this g2 square, so that's nice. So now you can take that safely. Queen defends that. Or you can even take with the king and hide it on h1 where it's going to be safe. So takes. No, he just defends. Wow, he's just allowing that queen. Is that just a pawn? No. Knight appears here, but okay. So takes. Oh, that's a proper queen. Rook defending this square that's cut off, threatening maiden 1. Rook appearing on g1, defending that. Knight takes. Pawn on e4, threatening f2. This is very difficult for white to defend. It's actually stirring up some crazy complications in these final seconds. Drawing the king out into the open, and there must be a mate here somewhere. Bishop, g5 clinches. Queen here would also suffice, but nicely done from Sexy, completely turning the tables there. Let's take a really brief look at that. First of all, xuanet does win the match 6-4. That was clinched a number of games ago, but Sexy comes back and kind of defends his honor with a very respectable 4-6 score against the beast that is xuanet. But let's take a really quick look at that game. So I'm curious. If we move back, what happened there? Okay. So here's where he played knight f5 instead of taking back first. And the computer seems to think that taking here or just taking on g2 directly is better than knight f5. Because this is a whole piece. It is a whole piece. But it's in xuanet's style just to play very aggressively. So he plays knight f5, stirring up complications. This knight h5 is a really nice find. Really nice find. Appreciating the fact that you're vacating the f6 square for this bishop to come and defend that rook should a queen ever take on g7. So there, he takes the queen, but I was wondering, why didn't he just take that back? Why didn't he? But yeah, so it was completely sound just to take that back. So here, bishop here, and king here, I was going to say, just getting out of that threat. And if you're threatening a pawn here, then you have time to take. So maybe his idea was to play takes, and then just step the knight back, contesting that you can't take here because then you're just going to get mated. But he doesn't have to take here as a thing. You can defend, like, just defend this square. Even as the computer points out, you can just place another bishop here. And if here, then place pawn on. Yeah, this is completely winning for black. Queen takes g7. But the thing is, you don't see this evaluation when you're playing this game with very little time on the clock. And a human might panic a little bit, and Sexy decides, like, I don't even need to take that. I can play here and still be okay. Just playing very intuitively, very practically, and making absolutely certain that he's ultra safe, uber safe on these dark squares. But I thought that could just be taken. But anyway, the game goes on. Okay, so rook peers here, and it's just not going to be enough. Black has his threats. At g2 is actually the computer's top suggestion. Interesting. See, I thought, what am I missing here? At g2, I thought you just take that with the queen, and I thought white was safe there. But so he takes with the king, but I'm curious what the computer suggests after here. Because knight check, that's defended. Is he just going to take stuff? Well, takes. He does take stuff. Okay. Let's go down this computer top line here. Go g8. I'm just blocking that off. And when the dust settles, I don't know. In a human game, the engine is saying that black's much better here, winning even -3.6. That's winning. But I don't know. In a over-the-board game and a blitz time control, even with increment, this is tough to figure out. It's not so straightforward. Takes. Add f3. And if takes, then you have a knight here. If takes, then you open up this square. Takes. Anyway, the game goes on, but just really interesting complications there. It's not always as straightforward as the engine analysis might make it seem. It's difficult to play so precisely in any game, especially one as complex as this. Yeah, and in the end, it's just brushing for black, and Sexy secures a respectable 4-6 score against xuanet. So, okay, with that said, let's take a quick look at the standings here, see whether or not that's been filled in yet. Let's see. xuanet against Sexy here has not yet been filled in, but that'll put xuanet at, 2.5 points with 3 matches remaining. Again, not quite enough to challenge Jan Lee in the final, but enough to bolster his score quite a bit and put him in good stead for his remaining matches. And Sexy, meanwhile, will stay at 2 points with 4 matches remaining. So what I'll be curious to see is to tune in for the remaining Opera Wiesen matches and see how he does in his remaining 2 matches. Again, he only needs 1 point out of those 2 matches to clinch. And I wonder what the case would be if he tied one of those matches and lost the other. I wonder what the tiebreak rules are. I don't remember what they are from last year or whether or not they've changed. But in any case, stay tuned, guys, for upcoming matches.